Next up, I think it's fair to say that a firestorm has been created in this county involving a columnist for Forbes magazine, the head of our Air Pollution Control District, Larry Allen, and County Supervisor Adam Hill. Tonight we're going to hear from Stephen Hayward of Forbes magazine. Mr. Hayward is a columnist for Forbes. He's also currently a visiting professor at the University of Colorado in Boulder. He's also the author of a 2-volume narrative history of Ronald Reagan. His essays have appeared in major publications throughout the country. And you can go to Forbes.com and you can read, it was posted on January, Bureaucracy in America Now Goes All the Way Down. We're pleased to welcome Stephen Hayward to this broadcast. Hey, Stephen.
Hi, Dave. How are you?
Well, good. Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us. I was trying to find the date on the Forbes piece. When was it in January? Do you remember offhand?
It was on Monday of this week, which was what, the 19th, 20th? I've lost track.
Right. And also, you have a local connection to the Central Coast, don't you, Stephen?
Yeah, I'm from out there. My main residence is up in Cambria, but I'm just spending a year as a visiting professor here in Colorado. So I'll be back this summer.
All right. Well, I'm sure there are some people who would like to talk to you. Are you surprised by the reaction you're getting to this piece?
Not really. I worked in Washington, D.C. for 10 years, and I used to write criticisms of the EPA, and, they just kind of ignore you. But I've learned over the years that if you criticize local government or local government politicians by name, they're much more thin-skinned. Yeah. And the bureaucrats react very negatively to any criticism you make, and that's, I think, it's sort of more proof of the theory that local bureaucracy is actually a bigger problem and is more headstrong than bureaucrats in Washington can be.
For example, I offered Larry Allen a chance to appear on this broadcast on equal time, and he turned down my invitation because he suggested that your analysis was pure ideology with a political purpose.
Look, I'm working on a book that the working title is Bureaucracy in America. And my point is going to be that the culture of bureaucracy, we complain about Washington, D.C. all the time. Right. My point is going to be it's worse at the local level in some ways because the culture goes all the way down. Now, I've written Mr. Allen a reply. It's appended to the article on Forbes, and I have challenged him to a public debate when I return to California, because I think public servants should be required to defend themselves from serious criticism. And, I've got a lot of experience in this. I was an invited peer reviewer by the EPA for their National Report on the Environment. I've been a peer reviewer for other national environmental projects. So Mr. Allen can ignore me if he wants, but I'm not going to ignore him.
And I would be happy to moderate such a forum.
That'd be great. I'll bet Cal Poly would be willing to host it.
I think we can make something happen here. All right, as you say in your original piece, Stephen, the thesis is that the culture of bureaucracy can be worse at the local level than at the federal level. You talk about the relentless growth of bureaucratic government in America. And you cite these little examples like the kid with a lemonade stand had to get a $400 permit. There are restrictions about selling Girl Scout cookies. But then you focus on SLO County, just to give our listeners some background here. And you talk specifically about Larry Allen and the APCD, and then you focus on Adam Hill and his bizarre letter to the editor of New Times last week. Both of these gentlemen have gone on the record as demanding an apology. They want you to retract, and Adam Hill's threatening you with a lawsuit. Are you standing by your original argument?
Of course. I've got a couple of facts wrong about Larry Allen that I've corrected, although I do point out that the budget documents for the Air Pollution Control District on salaries are deliberately opaque, and they're intended to obfuscate exactly what his compensation really is. There's direct compensation, and then there's $70,000, $80,000 of what's called variable cost in his salary line. I don't define what that is. Any public corporation explains those kinds of things in great detail because they have to. If the APCD was subject to SEC rules, Security Exchange Commission, they'd be hauled into court. Right. So there's more to all this. And, frankly, I don't follow the Adam Hill guy closely. I do when I'm in and out of town, and I was, appalled at that letter he sent. And I thought it expresses perfectly the kind of condescension an awful lot of a certain kind of people in local government have toward their fellow citizens. And I thought he should be called out about that. And by the way, he's totally ignorant of libel law. I told him in my reply he should go read New York Times versus Sullivan that establishes a very high bar for opinion criticism of public officials. And if he wants to sue me, this will be amusing. Yeah,
it will be, since his fiancée tried that with another local official and she lost.
Right.
So, and now there's also a blog called Powerline, and on that today, I'm quoting, you call Adam Hill the most appalling local government official I've ever encountered in my entire life. Hill has a spectacular history of astoundingly abusive behavior towards people who express disagreement with him.
Yeah, if the people of his district want to send him to be their representative on the Board of Supervisors, that's their right. That's what democracy is all about. What I'm amazed is that his peers, who I think must privately be embarrassed to share the dais with him at the county supervisors meeting, would elevate him to a position of responsibility on the board of the air district just because it's his turn. Well, that doesn't show an awful lot of thought on their part, it seems to me.
All right. And I don't know what happened, but yesterday he wasn't promoted to chairman. He remains vice chairman. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Oh, I heard that yesterday. Someone sent me an email, so I don't know. Maybe they are having second thoughts. Good for the rest of the board if they are.
Stephen Hayward joins us. You can read his essays at Forbes.com. Now, about Larry Allen and the APCD, Stephen, you seem to be very concerned that the APCD is the perfect example of this bureaucracy at the local level. And I'm quoting you now, a close consideration of the data will show an insignificant difference in air quality trends between San Luis Obispo and counties that don't have these kind of districts like APCD.
Yeah, that's what I'd love to debate him about and go through the data. I'm a real data maven. It's what I did in Washington, D.C. for 10 years and what I worked with the EPA on in developing a set of national indicators on a variety of environmental problems. And to make a long story short, and it is a long story, unfortunately, I'll put it this way. The air district model is something that was suitable for the 1970s, and we've outgrown it. And most of what's happening now in reducing air pollution is being driven by national standards and technology upgrades. And so an awful lot of the reduction in air pollution is happening everywhere at about the same rate. So this is why I say if you abolish the Air Pollution Control District today or had done it 10 years ago, you'd see virtually no difference in the trends in San Luis Obispo County. And beyond that, for a whole bunch of reasons that would take a while to explain, I think the legitimate enforcement actions, like making sure diesel generators conform to the rules, ought to be done through the planning department of the regular county government for a whole bunch of reasons I could go through.
All right. And then you also say there is extensive academic literature as to how agencies like APCD become increasingly zealous over time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's been 2 Nobel Prizes awarded to economists who study this phenomenon. When you're charged with a single purpose, and this is common sense, really, you don't need to be a Nobel Prize-winning economist to figure this out. When you're a single-purpose agency and you've got the law on your side, and your incentives are to perpetuate your budget, perpetuate your authority, look for new things to do, and the whole point is that bureaucracies are just like profit-seeking businesses. Instead of looking for a profit, they want to perpetuate their own power. So when have you ever heard of a bureaucracy that stood up and said, "Oh, we've mostly accomplished our mission and should be reformed, or we should go out of business"? It never happens.
We're joined on this broadcast by Stephen Hayward of Forbes magazine. We have him for a few more minutes. If you want in on the conversation, we need to hear from you now, please. 543-8830 or 1-800-549-5832. But Stephen, don't you give the APCD credit for, like, say, the fight to preserve air quality in the Nipomo Mesa and monitor off-road vehicles in the dunes? Don't they get any credit for that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've been out there to talk to the park rangers and tour the dunes, and, what you see is the wind blows off the ocean and blows an awful lot of particulates up from the sand. So I want to look at the data on that a lot more closely and see what data and justifications the Air District is using. I have to tell you, this reminds me very much in form of the fight over snowmobile access to Yellowstone National Park in winter, when the critics said, "Oh, they're noisy, they're disturbing wildlife." Well, the snowmobile people came along and said, "Fine, we can make a new generation that are quieter, they're almost silent, and don't pollute." And what do environmentalists and bureaucrats say? No, it turns out we don't want snowmobiles at all. I think the real agenda here and real motive here is they don't want ATVs on the dunes, and the air quality thing is probably an excuse.
And what is their agenda? Help me understand their bureaucratic agenda in this.
Well, the bureaucratic agenda is the same in almost all bureaucracies. There's legendary stories out of Washington that if you have money left over in your budget at the end of the year, the bosses tell you, go buy file cabinets and desks as fast as you can, because if we don't spend all our money,
right,
we won't get more money next year. And so that's just a microcosm of the way And that's just the way the bureaucracy is set up. As I say, there's huge literature about this.
All right, Chris is in Paso on KVEC. Hey, Chris.
Hi, Dave. Yeah, hi, Stephen. I've been following the articles. Excellent work, Stephen. And you're absolutely right. Adam Hill doesn't know diddly about the law as far as libel goes. And if he tries any litigation, he's going to end up bearing the costs, just as happened with his fiancée. It'll be vexatious litigation.
Yeah. And this is coming from an attorney. Any comment on this, Stephen?
Not really. I mean, I should mention that, you mentioned my Powerline blog. For people who aren't familiar with the blog, it's powerlineblog.com. We're the folks who ended Dan Rather's career at CBS News 10 years ago. We're the folks who demonstrated that he'd used forged documents in that 60-minute story attacking George W. Bush's National Guard service. And so my three partners on Powerline blog are all top litigators with white shoe law firms back east. So the point is, I've got lots of access to pro bono legal talent of the best in the country if Mr. Hill wants to tangle with me.
Yeah. Chris, anything else you want to say?
No, that's fine. I'm looking forward to this Tuesday's Board of Supervisors meeting. Might be kind of fun.
I think so. Thank you, Chris.